Well, this is my labor and delivery story, and I've been promising you guys this story for, well, almost a week now, and I'm finally getting to making it for you. If you haven't already, go check out the vlog that I just posted and give it a thumbs up, because it's hard vlogging with a newborn and everything going on. It all started the night before, which you guys saw. If you haven't already, I will put up an iCard. But I vlogged up until my labor, the night before my labor. And if you watch that video, you know that I was having some mild contractions about 10 minutes apart the night before. I went to bed and I woke up at 4:30 in the morning with a contraction, and again about 30 minutes later, and 30 minutes later, and 30 minutes later, I continued waking up through the night with contractions until I want to say it was like 6 o'clock, 6:20-ish, when I woke up to the most painful contraction that I felt through the entire labor. And I don't know why that is. I don't know what that was, but it was so painful. Like, I was like crying through it, and that's when I was like, okay, I have to get up now. Like, this is no joke. So I woke Bryce up and I said, I think we might have to go to the hospital this morning. And in my labor vlog, I was having a contraction when I said this, but I said it had been about an hour. In reality, Asher got on the bus about 30 minutes later. Okay, so I woke up at 6:20 and his bus arrived at 6:50-ish. So it was about 30 minutes between the time that I woke up with that contraction and that Asher got on the bus. And in that time, my contractions got easier. So I got out of bed after that contraction and got on my birthing ball, and I really was not in that much pain. The contractions weren't painful like they were in the bed. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this is just like a false alarm. I don't know what's going on. That contraction really hurt, but it was my body just messing with me. So I sat on the birthing ball for a while. I was continuously getting contractions that were around 5 to 7 minutes apart, but I didn't think anything of it. I never timed my contractions. Bryce did look at the clock whenever I'd say that I was having one once they got worse, but I never actively timed my contractions. So at this point, I was kind of helping Bryce get Asher ready. I was helping Bryce get Asher ready, and Bryce took Asher out to the bus when it arrived. At this point, the contractions were getting a little more painful. They were about 5 minutes apart, but between the contractions, I didn't feel like anything was wrong. And so I kept saying, you know, Bryce kept saying, we need to go to the hospital. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like these are going to just stop. And so I just kept saying, let's wait until Caden gets on the bus. Caden's bus comes at 7:45, I want to say. So keep that time in mind. So it was about 10-15 minutes after Asher's bus left. Bryce called my mom, who lives 40 minutes away, and said, you know, you might want to head up to the house and then we'll leave once you get here. And so my mom got everything packed and headed towards our house. And about 15 minutes after that call, my contractions became about 3 minutes apart, and I knew that I was in transition at that point, just because of the pain. And I've been through 3 unmedicated labors before, but the first 2 were inductions, and the third was my water being broken before I was in active labor. So they were all a whole lot more painful than this one. So I was in denial of most of my labor. And even during the transition phase, when I was still at home, I knew that I was in transition when I was having a contraction, and I said that in my labor vlog. I I knew I was in transition, but between, I was still packing my hospital bags and telling Bryce, you know, we need to hurry. By the time he got the kids in the car and called my mom and told her to just meet us at the hospital, I was saying, I don't think we're gonna make it. Like, I knew that we had a 30-minute drive to get to the hospital itself. And then I was just like, I kept telling Bryce, I really don't think we're gonna make it, because by that point we were well into the transition phase, and I knew I had to be somewhere around 8 centimeters because, again, I've done this several times before, so I knew where I was at. And I was starting to freak out. Bryce tried to call, like, we all got in the car and we headed out. And I totally did not film. I wish I had filmed in the car, but I totally was not thinking about it, so I'm sorry, guys. It would have been really cool to film that, because while I was in the car, I was having back-to-back contractions. That's how I knew that the transition phase was almost over. And surprisingly, it really wasn't as bad as any of my previous labors in the transition phase. I was able to talk through my contractions. I was able to obviously move through them. I did have to breathe. I did have to breathe through them. During the very end of the transition phase, I think I did like moan and like scream a little. Not, I wouldn't say scream, but I was like, you know, very vocal during the end of that phase. And Bryce was, by the way, speeding the whole way. He called an ambulance or he called a 911 because we'd heard that you can call 911 and you'll get a police escort. That's what we heard. Well, we called and they told us that they don't do that. So we're like, well, shit. So anyways, we kept driving and he was driving super, super fast, but we knew that I was probably not going to make it to the hospital. And so at this point, he's freaking out. I'm just like in my zone, like in labor, just trying to make it through. And we had Caden and Emrys in the back seat of the car, and we're like, they're gonna witness a birth in this car. Like, it was just the weirdest feeling. And then all of a sudden, like halfway through this drive, we were on the highway, and all of a sudden my contractions just stopped. And I knew that it wasn't over because I still had the like nausea feeling, and I felt like something was going on in my body. I couldn't quite vocalize it. I still felt like really painless contractions, but it just felt like an overwhelming, like calm, like someone just doped me up or something. Just a weird, calm, quiet, just weirdness. And that lasted, I want to say like 5 minutes. And then that's when I knew that I was going to start pushing. So when I knew I had reached 10, the baby was moving down in the canal to start the pushing. And about 5 minutes later, my body started contracting again hard. And without doing anything, I was not actively pushing, my body started pushing for me. And that's when I told Bryce on the highway, Bryce, we're not gonna make it to the hospital. I'm pushing now. And my poor husband, already freaking out, was like, no, we're not ready yet. And I just kept saying, like, we're not gonna make it. We're not gonna make it. And it wasn't like a scared we're not gonna make it, because normally during the pushing phase, I'm like freaking out. And this time I didn't even feel the pain. I don't know what kind of zone I was in, but I was just completely calm. You know, I was pushing inactively for about 10 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. And we were right up the street from the birth care center. Bryce had already called and told them that she's pushing now. I need you to have a room ready. Luckily they were able to take us in. They only have like 15 rooms available. If they hadn't been able to take us in, we would have had to go park in a parking garage and walk to the hospital and go to the 3rd floor. So thank God the birth care center had a room available. So we were right down the road from the birth care center, and I was still like inactively pushing. I wasn't like pushing. My body was pushing for me, and I just kind of let it. And we were down the road, and I felt a little gush of water, and I was like, yep, it broke. And it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming, and I'm like, okay. I was like, Bryce, my water broke. And here he's like, oh my God. We were hitting every single red light. We could see the birth care center, and there's like 5 lights to the birth care center, and every single one we hit a red light. And we finally made it to the birth care center. We pulled up. I had water down to my knees in this seat. Thank God they were leather seats. And my mom was already there. She ran out to the car. Bryce ran in to grab her wheelchair and got out of the car, got in the wheelchair. Bryce wheeled me partially in, and Mom stayed with the car. And then a nurse took over and wheeled me to the room, and they told Bryce that he needed to stay behind at the front desk to fill out paperwork. And I was like, are you kidding me? But I don't think they thought I was serious, because I wasn't freaking out or anything. I was just like calm. I got to the room. They hadn't even pulled the curtain over or anything. I just got out of the wheelchair and started pulling my pants and underwear off. And they're like, oh, okay. And they started helping me. And as soon as I got them off, I got in the bed, spread eagled, and like started pushing actively at this point. They had a nurse in there who was all geared up in case the resident did not make it in time. They had a nurse come like immediately after I got on the bed. She came to check me. She didn't even get her fingers in. She said I was 100% dilated, or 100% effaced, 10 centimeters dilated. Baby's head was positive 2 stations. She's coming now. And they're like, okay. They called my doctor. Knew my doctor was not gonna make it, but just told her, you know, she's pushing now. Just come when you can. And I was already actively pushing. They were trying to put my IV in, but I just told them, you know, wait till she's out, because she's like frowning at this point. And they're like, okay, you know, that's fine. Whatever. They did not even know my name. Bryce, I kept asking, bring my husband in here. I want my husband in here. And they brought him in, and when he came in, I was buck naked on this birthing table, because they had asked me once I got on if I wanted skin to skin. I said yes, so they pulled my shirt off for me and got me undressed. And I was like buck naked. And they're like, do you want anything to cover you? And I was like, you know what? I just stripped down nude, like here in front of all y'all. So, you know, modesty's out the window at this point. I don't really care. Came in, I'm buck naked on the table pushing. And he's like, oh. So it was 8 minutes from the time that we pulled up at the birth care center to the time that she came out of me. So it all happened very, very fast, and everything went great. I'll update more on my postpartum update, but that is basically everything that happened, and that's my birth story, and it went awesome. I am just like so happy with everything that happened. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I might have forgotten something, so just click on down there and ask. And I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!